This is the Calico community meeting for May 11th, 2022. I think it'll probably be a pretty quick one. So we just got off the heels of the 323 release, which Matt has been working on getting out the door. So that came out yesterday, which is why we probably don't have a ton to update on. We've just been heads down on that. But that's out. That had a few main things in it, including IPv6 VXLAN support, data status for the VPP data plane, CSI support for the Istio integration instead of using flux volumes, and a whole bunch of other improvements and fixes as well. Release notes are up. There's one set of upgrade instructions if you're using the Helm chart that are specific to v3.23, but otherwise it's business as usual. 324 is the next one. Haven't really got a lot to say on that yet. Still recovering from 323. I guess I can talk quickly about that Helm thing that I alluded at.
Hey Casey,
yeah.
Are we still doing meeting minutes?
Oh, yeah, we probably are, aren't we? That's a good call out. I'll throw the link in the chat. Forgot to add a section for today. This is how disoriented we all are with the release. Cool, I just added a new section for today, which is May 11th. Throwing in some titles now. Chris, do you want to help out with notes as usual?
Yeah, sure.
Thanks.
Browser.
So yeah, that Helm chart change is the only real upgrade step. And it comes from a change to actually respect the namespace that was passed in when the user was creating the chart. Should let you pre-configure your namespace if you want to set any special labels or annotations on it, or if you want to pre-configure secrets and things like that within the namespace, rather than having the chart itself create that. But it does mean you need to pass the namespace argument to Helm when installing. And then an upgrade, there's a couple of steps you need to take to sort of retroactively tell Helm that the release of the earlier version of Calico is actually within a certain namespace. Yeah, so I think those are the main updates for me. I don't know, Sean, did you have anything on eDPF data plane?
We have a few issues with the BPF data plane. In particular, like the hottest one is that newer versions of Docker and Kubernetes, it's more of a configuration thing rather than a specific version, so it's hard to pinpoint. But newer distributions of those things, newer OS versions and so on, are moving towards cgroup v2 for their containerization. And that has an impact on the BPF data plane. So if you're using cgroup v2 right now, then it doesn't install the connect time load balancer correctly. So we're working on that, and we have a fix in the pipeline, and then I expect we'll backport that once we have it.
Gotcha. So that's like an implication for services implemented with the VPF
Yeah, that
proxy.
that impacts services. In particular, if the host tries to access a service, that just won't work without the connect time load balancer. So it's a pretty key component. We actually have two fixes for that coming. So we'll fix that issue to make sure the connect time load balancer gets installed properly. But we're also kind of completing the picture when you don't have the connect time load balancer installed, so that the host can access services even if you don't have that installed. The connect time load balancer is great, but it has a couple of corner cases where it just like it fundamentally can't work. So if you have a raw socket, for example, there's no connection, the packets are opaque, so there's nothing for the connect time load balancer to apply to. And some platforms use raw sockets kind of more commonly than you might expect. Like I think .NET uses raw sockets just for some of its standard networking, like the networking library is in .NET rather than using the kernel's library in some cases and that kind of thing. So definitely something we need to address. Yeah, that was one case. And then connected UDP has a strange problem with the connect time load balancer as well. So that's another thing we want to address. So in particular, if you use connected UDP where you tell the kernel, I want to connect this UDP socket to this other this particular destination, and then we load balance that, there's no kind of feedback if that destination stopped being the right place. So there's no way to sort of surface an error back up to the client and say you need to make a new connection. Whereas with TCP, if you get disconnected from something, then you tend to know about it, and the error gets surfaced up when you get a sort of reset or something from the network telling you that that node's not reachable.
Yep.
So yeah, a couple of corner cases that we really need another implementation of that logic. So that's what we're doing.
Very cool. And that, so I know there was an issue I was going to bring up. Some folks are seeing issues with services not working on 322. That's a separate separate issue from this. I saw Tomas had got a fix up for that, so
Yep,
hopefully we'll have a patch out soon. Yeah, I think that was pull request 6056 for that fix. Yeah, looks like that's merged now. Nathan, Eloise, I know the big news is beta. Is there anything else you guys wanted to talk about?
That's mostly it. But with mostly without the codes, I think that the main takeout was a big thanks to all the help and the troubleshooting and the CI breakage and everything. Really nice to get that level of help from your side. So thanks a lot.
Yeah, Lance is the real hero there. He's doing a lot of work on behind the scenes.
Yeah, I want to say thanks as well to Matt for something unrelated to VP, but TRPF PR well, actually both Sean and Matt get that in. So thanks a lot for all the reviews, all the test shenanigans that we had to do, and yeah, we are already using it not in production, but not far, let's say. So thank you very much for getting that in 23.
And I think the only notable thing is that we switched our versioning scheme to match the Calico versioning scheme. So we have labeled our image 323 also, counting on the fact that we can have maybe separated dot release in case we find issues, as it's still better. So so we'll try on that.
Yep, I saw that in the PR. That's probably a good thing. We used to have lots of version numbers and nobody liked it.
Yeah.
Cool. Eric, did you have any operator stuff going on that we should know about?
I don't think anything too big. They're the only thing. I mean, I know 323 now has some migrations. Well, right, the IPv6 migration support went into 323. I believe that all was there for it.
Yep.
Let's see, was there another migration piece that was added, or was it just that? I guess it was
I think
just
we just
IPv6.
did some IPv6 stuff to account for the VXLAN work that we were doing.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, so that's in. One small thing is, though it's not in 323, it'll be in the next release. Is on Typha, it now has a preferred affinity to or anti-affinity, I guess, to try to spread it across zones. So that was a request that is an easy thing to add because it's preferred. So if it can't be satisfied, then you still get Typha anyway. So I think it can only make things better. One issue that is, and you're aware of this, Casey, that I actually introduced for 320, not for 323, but 323 has it, is the operator isn't the status is not correct if a pod is failing. I believe is the result of the issue. But also, if everything's okay, then you get log messages that things aren't okay. I guess this is another small operator thing. I did some fix up to so that we could turn on our static checks in CI, and one of the things I fixed I broke. I didn't fix, so and I've got a PR up for that, and so we'll hopefully get a change out before too long with that fix.
Yeah, I just put that in the notes. Would you mind sticking a PR on it?
Sure, yeah, can do that. Yeah, I think that's all I can think of, know about.
Cool. Yeah, I'm aware of that issue and one other user report that the Helm chart might not be behaving the way we expect. So I'm gonna gather up some issues as they come in over the next day or two, and then probably do a patch release next week. Assuming
Cool.
we get fixes for all those.
The thing I broke should be pretty easy to fix. I think it is.
Yeah, I saw the PR and I think I already approved it.
Okay.
Like I said, we probably want to look at a test or something to catch that scenario.
Yeah, I was trying to look through them and see if there were any that already were similar that I could adjust to catch it.
I'm not sure if do we have like any mock based tests for that logic, or is it all just running against a real cluster?
I didn't think it was running against a real one, but I didn't see any that were like mocking pod states or anything.
Yeah, that might be something we need to add to that that framework. Cool. So I think the two issues that I had wanted to call out, we've already talked about, which was the Helm chart issue. Somebody is reporting a bug with that. Still need to verify that and try to understand it a little better, but there may be an issue there. And then, yeah, the eBPF services one, which we talked about a little bit earlier, is a merged PR for 322. I don't think that, I think it's only 322 that's impacted by that, so 323 should be fine. But we'll be looking at getting a patch out for that as well. Any other issues while we're talking about those that anyone wanted to call attention to? If not, then I have a couple shout outs to give. I wanted to give a shout out to Shearer J, Johannes Shearer, I believe, on GitHub. He's been working on pull request number 5910, which includes a fix for some of the token CNI plugin token issues we've been seeing. That one should be good to merge quite soon, but really excited about that one. It adds logic to Calico node so that we actually reach out and ask for new tokens specifically for the CNI plugin, and don't just piggyback off the token that's been given to Calico node. So hoping that fixes some of these issues we've been seeing recently about Calico node being evicted or removed from the node, and the CNI plugin not having credentials anymore.
I had a shout out as well. There was a contributor who submitted a couple of PRs, one to optimize part of the calculation graph that was failing in there, was being slow for their use case. And yeah, it's really nice to see someone homing in on like their particular area and submitting a really good patch. Let me just see if I can pull his name out. Or their name out.
I think I know the one you're talking about. Got it open somewhere because I was planning to dig through that.
Yeah, don't have it to hand. Open.
And GitHub is being weird today as well. Getting a lot of 500s.
Nope, sorry, struggling to find it.
I think I found it. I'll throw. There's a couple of them, right, by the same author. You're thinking about these. There's one that I think you and I both looked at, which is the policy resolver improvement. And then there's another one for label indexing.
Yeah. So that's Yun Zhang. Apologies to not being able to pronounce Chinese names properly.
Was it Yin Zhang? Something like that?
I think I've seen it spelled two different ways.
I'll throw
Yun
his,
Hong Jiang on Calico users.
You don't mind correcting it on the if I've got it wrong. I was pretty close. I was pretty close.
So I don't think we've been kind of preoccupied with 323. I didn't get a demo lined up for today, so don't have anything cool to show you guys. Oh God. But we got time for any other questions or other topics that anyone might have, or complaints.
Reza, I don't know if you wanted to quickly mention the Azure course.
All right. Yeah, we got an Azure course coming up. It's all about Azure and Calico. It's the same certificate-based progress that we had for the other courses, and I hope you enjoy it.
Do you want anyone here to dive into to help you be, kind of final rung of testing before you release it, or are you happy with where you are on that?
That would be awesome if somebody could, yeah. Just
if anyone has
let me
time.
know in the Slack.
Does that include the new bring your own CNI stuff that Azure added?
Yes. It does.
Nice. Cool. Yeah, that was another thing we did in 323 was testing and validation of that integration. So cool to see that included.
Yeah, nice one, man.
Does that IPv6, the XLAN, does that require your underlying network to be IPv6, presumably? It's the XLAN v6.
Yeah, it uses an IPv6 header on the outer packet. So yes.
Makes sense.
I think to make Kubernetes run IPv6, you have to be running IPv6 anyway. Or I don't know, maybe it's impossible to make it do that without underlying being IPv6. I don't know.
Yeah, where there's a will, there's a way, but I think for the most part, you're right.
Somebody will do it probably.
We certainly managed to break a few people when we did proper IPv6 support, because there were people who were running Calico and they'd configured Calico to do IPv6, but Kubernetes wasn't configured to do that. Like they were using an etcd data store, so Calico didn't care what Kubernetes was doing. And then that all broke, I think, when we did it properly.
Yeah, teaches us to try and be ahead of the curve, or not to be.
I'm not sure there is a curve with IPv6.
Hey Casey, what about or maybe this was with 322, the IP pool, I guess Felix auto detection of IP pool stuff. Has that been called out?
Oh yeah.
Here?
Yeah, I know the one you're talking about. So for the longest time, we had this logic where when you created or updated an IP pool that had an encapsulation enabled, either IP/IP or VXLAN, we would behind the scenes go in and update Felix configuration to turn on IP/IP or VXLAN encap. However, it was kind of awkward because you could only do it one direction. So you only knew, given your IP pool, that it was at least enabled. You couldn't ever assert that it was disabled if you turned it off, because that's dependent on all the other IP pools that exist in the cluster as well. So like you got into the situation where if you turn on VXLAN and then turn it off, you don't get back to the same state you started in. And that had implications for like the MTU calculation and like Felix cleaning up devices on the host and stuff. So we did some work in 323, I believe. I don't think it was in 322. So that Felix looks at those IP pools directly instead of relying on this sort of cascading set of updates. And so when you create an IP pool now with VXLAN enabled, for example, it doesn't update Felix configuration. Felix just sees that pool and knows that VXLAN is enabled. You can still use Felix configuration to override that if you want to say, you know, I don't care what's on the pool. I always want VXLAN enabled, or I always want it disabled. You can still do that explicitly. But by default, it won't update that. I think the one thing that you found, Eric, is if you start from 323 and then downgrade to 322, that can cause issues because Felix configuration hasn't been updated to use the new one. So if you do that, you need to explicitly set it in Felix config. But if you start from 322, upgrade to 323, and then downgrade, you're fine.
Yeah, I didn't think that particular bit was important for this. This
yeah,
group,
I mean,
but
it's
yeah.
worth calling out. I mean, it's sort of business as usual. Like when you add a new API field in a newer version, you shouldn't expect that to work in an older one. The weird thing about this is it's not a new API field. It's just making it work the way that we present it to work.
Yeah, well, I generally don't think, yeah, if you install with a new one that it necessarily needs to be, you shouldn't expect to be able to downgrade, really.
Yeah, we try to make that work for the most part, but this is just one rare scenario where it doesn't.
Yep. I just think it's nice now that that doesn't have to be duplicated. It's auto detected or auto figured out.
Any other questions, topics? Haven't heard any complaints yet. If not, then we can wrap this one up. Nice quick meeting this week. And see you guys all on GitHub and Slack. Doodles.